The bundle! Hey guys, welcome back to Bombchu! I'm Austin, and today I'll be... Today, I'll be covering the Humble Monthly Bundle from April 2018. This month's Humble Original is Lyric Sonata. It's described as a miniature side-scrolling adventure across music notation. You use the mouse to guide whatever it is you're controlling across bars of music. Notes that you pass are played, and sometimes you'll pass through strings that you strum rather than music notation. Sometimes it's melodious, sometimes it's cacophonous, and often it's both in quick succession. This is definitely one of the more artsy Humble Originals, and it's pretty light on gameplay. That's not always a bad thing, but in this case, Lyric Sonata didn't really connect with me. I ended up getting stuck in this section, and after looking around for a few minutes on where to go, I wasn't really all that interested in finding out what was next. I don't think I'll play this one again. Laser League is a top-down team-based competitive sport with lasers. You and your teammates race against the enemy team to take control of laser nodes that start to pop up across the floor. Each node your team activates produces a laser that is harmless to you, but lethal to enemies. If you or a teammate goes down, don't worry, you can revive each other. The more lasers you control, the harder it is for enemies to navigate the field. But if you have control of several lasers, don't get too comfy. After a little while, nodes will become neutral again and can be claimed by anybody. There are also power-ups, some of which will flip all your active nodes to the opposite team, and vice versa. If you get trapped between a beam and a bright place, you can walk into the wall to come out on the opposite side of the level. This got me out of a pinch on more than one occasion. Finally, you have a special ability that charges over time. Once it's fully charged, you can shock anyone near you to stop them in place for a moment, preventing them from running away from an incoming laser. As the game goes on, the lasers get longer and the patterns get more complex, making it harder and harder to move around with much freedom if you aren't in control of most of the board. This one's interesting. I may give it a play with some friends. Outlast 2 is a horror game where you play as a cameraman looking to film a murder investigation. I have played the first Outlast, I did not finish it. And from what I've played of this sequel, I can tell you I won't be finishing it either. And that's not a bad thing. I absolutely love horror movies, but I am a huge pansy when it comes to horror games. I get too immersed when I play games, and the horror is just too real for me. So I'm gonna have to watch someone else play this for me someday. Sure, there's a story mode difficulty, which removes most of the danger, but playing anything less than normal makes me feel like a baby. Anyways, let's get to the game. It starts off with a full-page warning telling you it's got a lot of very adult content, and since YouTube has gotten a little trigger-happy with demonetizing videos, I'm gonna have to play it safe here. Pretty much immediately, you and your wife get into a helicopter crash. When you awaken, you find that, luckily, your camera still works. Your camera gets a lot of use throughout the game. You can use it to record important story notes, and then check those files later to hear the main character comment on them if you don't understand their significance. One of the first things you record is your helicopter pilot, who has been secured to a tree. Lovingly secured so he can nap without falling over. Also, this pile of napping babies. You can also use it for night vision, and you're going to be using that a lot because it is really dark just about everywhere. Finally, you can use its microphone to hear what's going on behind a wall you're pointing at, which is useful if you're trying to avoid nap time from the locals. Unfortunately, it uses batteries, and it consumes them pretty quickly, making you feel like you shouldn't be using it all the time, adding a wonderful layer of stress. Well, so far I've seen a few sleepy sights, but nothing has really... Nope! Of course, you can't really fight anything, so you have to sneak around, or if you are detected, you have to run and hide. Boy, do I love trying to deal with closing, then locking this door behind me. Thank goodness I can hide under this bed and watch in suspense as my attacker breaks into the room. Outlast 2 has a ton of polish in its visuals and presentation, and so far it's done an excellent job at generating dread, even when nothing is around. If you like horror games, definitely give it a go. Lara Croft GO is an HD port of a mobile game from the creators of Hitman Go. You control Lara from the Tomb Raider series on an adventure similar in theme to her past games, but quite different in gameplay. Rather than an action-adventure, this game is a moving puzzle. Lara can only move to adjacent tiles connected by a path, and each move she makes moves time forward. Things start simple, with the only danger being cracked floors and walls, which you can only safely traverse once. However, as you get further in, enemies start to get added in, starting with snakes, which remain stationary unless Lara passes into the tile directly in front of them. Next is the salamander, which will start to follow Lara around whenever it gets sight of her. I also found spiders, which roam a set path, and there are probably even more I haven't encountered yet. Each mechanic you deal with is simple, but they're used together well in each level to make you think a bit about your next move before you make it. There are bonus objectives that come from finding vases, though it's easy to sometimes get too focused on the level and miss a few that might be in plain sight. This game screams mobile, but this is a solid PC port. I found myself having a hard time putting it down, and I'm almost certain to finish it sometime soon. Deus Ex: Mankind Divided is the sequel to Deus Ex: Human Revolution, and picks up 2 years after that game. I have to be honest, I haven't played Human Revolution yet, so I can't really compare the two, but as this game tells you, it's a standalone experience. You play as Adam Jensen, an augmented human. Before your first mission begins, your commanding officer asks you a couple of questions to determine how you'll approach the mission. You can go lethal or non-lethal, with story explanations as to why you might pick either option, and you can choose to shoot from afar or get up close and personal. It was really nice getting to pick my loadout with dialogue options, as when I'm given a screen to change all my equipment out before ever having played a game, I don't really know what to pick and get overwhelmed and go with the defaults. I chose to go non-lethal and up close and personal, so I ended up doing a lot of stealth knockouts. Thankfully, my default augments were geared for this, as I had an augment that could silence my footsteps, and an augment that could make me invisible. However, these use energy, and so does the strength augment used for knocking out enemies, so I couldn't just cheese the level with silence or invisibility. Controls took some getting used to, though there are a number of control schemes to choose from if the default setup isn't to your liking, each with a descriptor of who they're geared towards. I think what impresses me most about this game is how many options you have all over the place, but they're handled in a way that isn't overwhelming, which is usually the case for me in a game like this. It's approachable without sacrificing complexity. I'll definitely play more. God Eater 2 Rage Burst is an action game similar to Monster Hunter and set in a futuristic anime universe. Your main missions here have you fighting large boss monsters with tons of health and crafting gear out of their parts. You're encouraged to bring a group to help, as things can get overwhelming alone. Different from Monster Hunter, you always have a melee and a ranged weapon. You charge up ammo for your ranged weapon by using your melee weapon, and then switch over to unleash the damage. You can also use your weapon to take a bite out of monsters, which will give you a buff and some special ammo depending on what type of monster it is. Having played a lot of Monster Hunter, it was difficult to wrap my head around everything in this game initially because the naming scheme is pretty obtuse, and it doesn't help that the controls are pretty convoluted to figure out as well. Once you know them, they don't feel bad, but actually figuring them out is a real pain. For example, the run button is the same button you use to switch your weapon between melee and ranged. You just hold it down if you want to run. It also takes a significant amount of time to actually fight a boss, as the first several missions are just fighting several regular enemies. Throughout those levels, I couldn't find myself recommending this game, but once I reached some actual bosses, my buddy and I started having some fun. If you're still waiting for Monster Hunter World to hit PC later this year, I would personally recommend Tukiden over God Eater, but there are worse ways you could spend your time. Mafia III is an open-world action game set in the 60s. You play as Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam War soldier who had to join the Black Mob out of necessity after returning home from the war. The gameplay is largely based on Grand Theft Auto. You can go pretty much anywhere and do anything. If the police see you breaking the law, they come after you. You can drive safely and follow traffic lights, or you can do stuff like this. While I was doing this, there was a guy in the car with me trying to talk to me, and every time I crashed into something, he'd yell about something and then say, "Anyway," before returning to his story. Anyway, this game places a heavy emphasis on story, and from what I've played so far, it's a pretty interesting one. Unfortunately, this also means that gameplay takes a bit of a backseat. Movement either locks you down to a snail's pace or feels so slippery that I constantly run past whatever I'm trying to reach. Gunplay doesn't feel satisfying either. Presentation is also a mixed bag, which is a damn shame. The clothes, the menus, the signs, the cars all gush 60s charm, and the licensed soundtrack is excellent, though I won't be playing any of it here to avoid copyright claims. However, this is all marred by performance issues and kind of dumbed down graphics. The game also defaults to 30 frames per second, and while you can thankfully increase it to 60 or uncapped, there are a lot of elements that are hard-coded to render at 30 FPS. It's clear this was developed as console first, and PC wasn't really considered heavily during development. I may continue just to get some more of the story, but if the gameplay doesn't pick up, I may just watch the rest of this one on YouTube. Subterrain is a top-down survival game set on a ravaged base of Mars. Unrelenting, survival, crafting, walls of text. Barf! Yeah, this is not my type of game, but hey, gotta give it a chance. The story starts off strong, with the main character having been abandoned in his prison cell for a week after some sort of catastrophe happened. When you're given control, you have to find a way out of your cell, and as you do, you see mutilated corpses of guards and other prisoners littered throughout the prison. Something immediately cool, you map the room through eyesight. Once you've looked at a part of a room, you can see it whether you're looking at it or not, making exploration easier. However, this tricked me into thinking I could just see everything around me, which is not the case. If there's an enemy around and you aren't looking at them, they are invisible to you. My first encounter, I thought I was being shot from somewhere else, but it turned out there was a mutant punching me in the back. Kinda cool, but also a bit jarring and unintuitive. As you pass through, you have to find keys to get through locked doors so you can move further, but at the same time, you have to manage your hunger, thirst, and sleepiness, as well as your need to go to the bathroom. This means you'll have to scavenge for food and water, deciding if you should risk contamination by drinking tap water, or wait it out until you find purified water, etc. While this does have some interesting things, Subterrain is still part of a genre that is just not for me. This one has very positive reviews on Steam, but scrolling through all the positive reviews, most of them seem to be pretty reserved, and note that the game has a lot of issues and really isn't for everyone. But if you like survival games or horror games and don't mind a top-down interface, you might find something you like here. AER Memories of Old is just what I was looking for. An exploration puzzle game with pleasing aesthetics and bird flight! Yes, you can transform into a bird and enjoy fast flight through several islands scattered throughout the sky. This piece alone earns major brownie points with me, because it's just a joy to fly. In between flights, you walk around on the ground like a pleb and solve puzzles. This piece of the game works well enough and fleshes out the story, however, ground platforming is a little unpolished. Sometimes I would jump in directions I really wasn't pushing towards, and your body can get stuck on lots of little things in the environment. The game takes some obvious inspiration from Zelda, using significant terms and ideas from the series, as well as having a Breath of the Wild shrine-like area just before the first of 3 temples, where you need to unite 3 relics. You get the idea. It doesn't just rip off Zelda though, it comes off with its own identity. If you don't like puzzle platformers, you probably won't enjoy this one, and even if you do enjoy puzzle platformers, this game has its problems. Still, I'd say it's worth a try, and I plan to finish it. So overall, how was this bundle? This was a really mixed bag for me, as there were some titles I quite enjoyed, but there were also a few I just really didn't love, and a lot I could take or leave. There's usually at least a couple of games in any given bundle that I've never heard of before, but this is the first time in a while that I've already known about each game already, which is a bit disappointing as I love to discover new games. At the very least, there's quite a lot of variety here. This bundle really covers the gamut. So how much bang for your buck was there? To total everything up, getting all these at full price would cost a sizable $207. Getting all these at their lowest sale price would rack up a cost of close to $70, a pretty good value. I'd say this was a decent bundle. Humble really knocked it out of the park for me the last few months, and I couldn't expect them to keep that up forever. But at the very least, this bundle wasn't a disappointment. Next month's bundle has Dead Rising 4, Kerbal Space Program, and Ruiner. Let's get a sneak peek. Dead Rising 4 is, of course, the 4th game in the Dead Rising series. Frank West is back, at least sort of. He looks like Frank, but he doesn't really sound or act like Frank. Capcom opted to change voice actors this time around, and for some reason, this version of Frank was written to be a colossal asshole, and not in a fun way. He cracks bad jokes when causing pain and suffering to people, and I'm not talking about regular zombies here either. He hijacks his student's story, insists on not helping anybody, and just constantly reminds you that he's an awful person. This is not the Frank West we know and love. Since you're playing as Frank, you have a camera again, which you can use to take interesting pictures for points, as well as journaling important moments to progress the story. It has some other lenses that can be used, such as night vision to see in the dark, and spectral analysis to crack passwords and other miscellaneous uses. Weapon mixing is still around, and of course, it's still the best part of Dead Rising. Explosive hammers, electric axes, whatever you can find blueprints for. There are a lot of ridiculous combinations you can make, all with wonderfully fun to use special attacks. Beyond that, it's Dead Rising. Mow through hordes of zombies as creatively as you like while doing missions and side quests, only this time, the main character and story don't have much going for them, so it's a little less motivating, especially since you're also retreading the same mall from the first game. After 3 main series games that have topped out at good but not great, I think this series could use a break. If you've never played a Dead Rising game before, you might find some fun here if you trudge through long enough, but I can't ever see myself playing this outside of co-op on a day when I have nothing better to do. Kerbal Space Program is a silly space flight simulator. Well, silly in tone. Your astronauts are the funny little Kerbals, who are so silly that you won't feel quite so bad about the numerous times you'll end up stranding or crashing their ships. And you will strand and crash their ships a lot. Not so silly is the simulation aspect of this game. The shipbuilder is serious business with a ton of things to consider, lots of options to tweak, and a wealth of situations to prep for. It's extremely overwhelming for me, as I'm awful at building games. You can save individual sections you've put together for reuse in other designs, though you'll want to name and describe them well if you want to remember what they actually are. There is seriously so much to work with here. I went into sandbox mode and made this monstrosity. Hey, more fins means more aerodynamic, faster rocket, right? But unfortunately, I could never get it to lift off. There's an extensive tutorial that would probably teach me all the ins and outs, but for the purposes of this review, I just don't have the time to get through them all, as it would take hours and hours. I'll probably bum around in there some more after this review, but if you like building games and physics simulations, you should definitely give it a try. Ruiner is an isometric action game set in a futuristic metropolis. You play as a person whose brain has been hacked and are given the simple mission to kill boss. Whoever boss is has a lot of henchmen, and you'll get to use them to learn the controls and game mechanics. You have a melee weapon, but once I got my hands on a gun, I didn't really use my melee much anymore. Your base gun has infinite ammo, but you can pick up stronger guns with limited ammo to pack a punch when you need it. You can dash both to move quickly and evade bullets and other forms of damage. You also have energy, which you can use to power skills and gadgets. Starting off, I only had this shield, which is pretty useful in some situations. Killing bad guys and doing it well earns you karma, which you can use to buy and upgrade skills. Between levels killing bad guys, you get to freely walk around the city, giving you a chance to breathe and take everything in around you. The gameplay is solid, but the style and atmosphere, this game just oozes with style. I just can't tear my eyes away, and the music pairs quite well with it, thumping along as you murder countless aggressors. It has a very Hotline Miami feel to it, though it maintains its own style and identity. I like this one a lot. I'll definitely keep playing. Alright, we got 9 games from the April bundle, a preview of 3 games from the May bundle. Whew, that was a lot. But I have one more thing for you. If you've been watching Bombchu for a long time, you may get a kick out of this. Super Sunday is back. Starting next Sunday with Super Castlevania IV, every Sunday Andron and I will be questing our way through every game in the North American Super Nintendo library. This season we've scrapped the Retron 5 for the Super NT, with better upscaling and more authentic gameplay. We've got a lot of great games ahead, and if you're into that sort of thing, definitely check it out. I've also started a new series called Game Grooves, where I'm going through and taking a look at my collection of video game music on vinyl. To celebrate the return of Super Sunday next weekend, I'll also be doing an episode of Game Grooves on the Super Castlevania IV soundtrack. I hope you check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.